Hello, everyone. This is the pre-workshop presentation. Before we begin with the workshop, please introduce yourself in the chat window. I can already see the chat box buzzing. And yes, please carry on this energy throughout this session. And yeah, please go ahead and introduce yourself, where you're from, what you do, and what you're expecting from this session. We have people from Mumbai. We have people joining in from Pune. Yes, hello Reshma ma'am from Bangalore, fellow. Yeah, we have from Hyderabad, Mumbai, Bangalore. So much diversity you all bring to this space. Thank you so much for joining in. Learning and exposure for teachers and educators have been an inspiration behind Firki workshops. And you can go through the different workshops, webinars, learning paths conducted on the portal. The link to the same will be posted in the chat window soon. We believe that your time is invaluable and we want to be acknowledged and we want you all to feel acknowledged for your presence in this session, and we will be providing you all with a certificate of attendance. This certificate would be made available to participants who attend all the 3 days of the workshop. We will share more details on how to fill out the feedback form and access the certificate on day 3 of the workshop. Yeah. You can join Firki webinar or a workshop on two platforms. One is the Zoom and the other is the YouTube. The YouTube link will be pasted shortly in the chat window. Now I will take you through a few features on Zoom that you can use to have an engaging and productive session. This is the mic button. You can click this to keep yourself muted. Unmute only if the speaker asks you to. This is the video button. You can use this button to switch on and off your video with. Then you can share your questions and thoughts in the chat window. I can already see the chat box buzzing. Please keep sharing your reflections on the chat window because that will maximize your learnings as well. And I will be here to curate your questions. The entire Firki team is here to curate your questions and share them with our speakers at the end of our workshop as well. Very importantly, please rename yourself, since then only we will be able to mark your attendance for the 3 days and provide you with the certificate. So here are the steps to follow to rename yourself on Zoom. Kindly do this with me if you have not done this already, right? So click on the participants button located at the bottom of the Zoom window. On both laptop or on mobile, you can see the participants button at the bottom of your screen. This will open a panel on the right side of the screen showing a list of participants. Then you need to select your name in that participants panel and over your name and click on the more button that appears. So the 3 dots that appear. Once you do that, you have to select rename option from the drop down menu. Enter your new name in the pop-up window. Please make sure that you are entering your full name so that we can mark your attendance, and then click change or OK or rename or done, whatever is appearing for you. So if you're joining from laptop, change, you would see change. And if you're appearing from a mobile, you will see either a OK or a done button. Yes. So, ma'am, you need to select your name in the participant list and click on more or the 3 dots that will appear. And then you need to click on the rename button and write your name. So please make sure that you are entering the space with your full name. Yes, so Tasnim, can you kindly help, I think, the participants in the chat box as well while they rename themselves? Yeah, thank you. After the workshop, we would encourage you to talk to people around you about what you learned in the session today. And we remember best when we share our learnings with others. So practice learning from the workshop in your work. Access the certificate and the resources on the Firki app. And please note, again, I'm reiterating that participation is required for all the 3 days and it is mandatory. So please ensure that you are present for all the 3 days to receive a certificate. Attend our next Firki workshop or a webinar. To do so, you can sign up on our Firki portal to get more updates as well. That brings us to the end of the pre-workshop presentation. Let us begin with our workshop now. So, hello everyone, we are delighted to have you all join us for today's episode titled Building Resilient Leaders in partnership with the Fountainhead School. It is a 3-day workshop and today is the day 1 of the workshop titled Insightful Leadership. I'm your host Deepika. I work at Firki and I will be your guide for this workshop to help you navigate through it. Right? And yeah, so let me take you through the agenda for the next 3 days. So on day 1, that is today, you will learn techniques to foster a culture of critical thinking in your organization with Ms. Bhargavi and Shezin ma'am. Then on day 2, you will discover the leadership skills nuances while working effectively within a team with Ms. Mariam ma'am and Ritu ma'am. And finally, on day 3, you will discover the power of perspectives and the strength found in vulnerability as we navigate their impact on personal growth and learning with Utsav sir. As we move to the workshop, there is a request for all of you. We request you to keep your cameras on for effective interaction. To avoid disturbance, we request you to keep your mics off unless the speakers ask you to unmute. Use the chat window to ask a question or raise a hand to say something. Participate enthusiastically throughout the session. Take notes actively to capture your learnings. We will share the recording as well after the session. We request you to keep this as a non-judgmental space. And by that we mean we expect that you respect each other's views and experiences. For example, when I say that as a coach, I sometimes struggle with decision making, I am doing so because I consider this as a safe space. Similarly, you should feel actually safe and free to share your own experiences and respect one another. By doing so, we can create an environment which is very safe and respectful for each and every one of us here. Thank you. We hope you have an interesting workshop. Over to our speakers now.
Hello, everyone. Just give me a second. I'll share the screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So good evening, everyone. So we are going to take workshop today on insightful leadership and enhancing. Our focus is going to be enhancing critical thinking in education and leadership. So like it was earlier also mentioned, but we'll just quickly tell you who we are. So I'm Shezin. I'm the Assistant Diploma Program Coordinator at Fountainhead School. Along with that, I am also a TOK coordinator. TOK is the subject theory of knowledge. And I also teach the same subject. And I am also the coordinator for Maverick Learning Center. It is a PBL, project-based learning setup within Fountainhead School. And I'm also facilitator for critical thinking live class. Along with me, we have Bhargavi ma'am. Bhargavi ma'am, would you like to talk about yourself?
So I'm Bhargavi. I'm the Diploma Program Coordinator. So for all of you, because it's an IB International Baccalaureate program, we call it as Diploma Program. Ideally, it's grade 11 and 12. Easy for all of you to understand. TOK, teacher as well. And I'm also a facilitator like Shezin for Critical Thinking Live Class, which is a live class which we conduct for all our teachers every year, which is an 8-day workshop for all the teachers of the school.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So during the presentation, if you we will be talking about a lot of things with regards to critical thinking. The main idea that we have is that we want to kind of give you that space to think and to think about your thinking, to kind of create that kind of an habit. So critical thinking is a skill. So a lot of time we may feel that, okay, whether someone can learn it or not, because it is a skill, everyone can learn it. So how you can learn that skill is what we are going to try to focus upon. It is more of a self-learning. It is more of an introspection that what we are aiming for the today's session. And during the session, if you have questions like mentioned by Deepika ma'am also, you can just keep on putting them on the chat boxes, and please try to be more participating in the entire session for the maximum learning. Okay, so now this is going to be our first activity. So keep your chat box open and just listen to my question. So as of now, just take a second, close your eyes, just follow the instructions, okay? So everyone, please close your eyes and imagine a world map. So try to imagine a world map and just follow my instructions. So now you all are imagining a world map. Try to see what are the colors that are visible to you. Now think about if you can see any shapes or any symbols that come across when you imagine a world map. Think about the lines and how the map looks like. So what comes more prominent in front of you when you imagine a world map? Now please open your eyes, and on the chat box, please write down what were the things that you were imagining. So when you were imagining the world map, my first question was the colors that you could see. Okay, so blue, green is largely the color coming. Okay, there is some yellow, there is orange. Okay, okay. Fair enough, brown,
One with
gray.
topic of cancer.
Yeah.
Those
Correct.
words are also being added.
What are the kind of shapes or symbols that you were able to see when you were imagining it?
So one I read was tiger,
Okay.
mountain, tiger, lines, diamond, gate, blue river, triangle shape, India map, spider, bear. Those shapes are also coming up.
Okay, fair enough. So thank you so much for your inputs. Okay, so now we gave you the task of imagining a world map. Now, honestly, please let me know if there was someone who could imagine this map. Was this your imaginary map? Okay, I'm sure most of them are saying no. Fine. So just to give you some context, this is a world map. Okay, this is one of the first world maps that was ever created by cartographers. Cartographs are the one who create the maps. So this is one of the first world map that was created when the exploration stage was going on, when people were still not ready with, they had not explored the entire world yet. So as you can see here, there are some of the ships and the boats that you could see that represents that, okay, these are the areas which were covered by those explorers when they were crossing different continents. As you can see, some places there are still lands and all that is visible, because those were the lands, those were the countries and the continents that were already explored. Also, as you can see, there are these big dragons. So that dragons in a way represents that these are the still uncharted areas. These are the areas which are not yet explored. And so they were in a way telling or portraying that these are the areas which should not be traveled, which are yet not safe for traveling. So this is also one of the imaginary, this is also one of the map, but none of us could imagine this map. So it is not that this map is incorrect. Also, it is not that what you thought or what you imagine is incorrect, but there is definitely a difference between what we could imagine and what is beyond our scope of imagination. So can you tell me why we could not imagine this map? What was the reason for not looking at this thing?
Because we have not seen it ever, perhaps.
Okay.
Also because we used to imagining the map in a particular manner.
Okay.
Think we tend to connect to the
Yeah, right.
pre-existing knowledge base, such as the ones that we see, the physical map, the political map. No,
We
this
have
is
Correct.
already seen so many
very
maps.
new.
Okay, yeah. So thank you so much for your answers. So yes, because so the one important point, that one important message that we want to convey here, and which is something very important for all of us to understand, is the concept of coherence. So coherence is something that which fits into our brains. Our brain is a pattern seeking thing. So this is something that we have always been used to seeing the world map as. So when you came across this map, you found that, okay, this is something very different. This, first of all, when we show it at our school to our teachers, they don't even agree, first of all, that to call something like this as a map, because it does not fit into our coherence. So a lot of time when a new information, a new knowledge is being shared with us, is being told to us, we don't immediately accept it because it does not fit into our coherence. So that doesn't mean that the information or the knowledge is incorrect, but that only means that still we don't know or we are not aware about it. So that is the first thing that we wanted to talk about, that is the coherence. So please look up for this kind of words that I'm saying. So a lot of time, because we are into education, because we are into, some of us are also into leadership positions, a lot of time we are required to make decisions. Now, when we are required to make decisions, a lot of new information and new knowledge keeps on coming across us. But if we are stuck and if we remain in that coherence only, and we want to just keep on connecting the dots of our existing knowledge, then making decisions or looking in the future gets very difficult for us. So that was the main idea that we wanted to convey through this map activity. Now, the next activity that we are going to do is that we are going to give you some headlines. So we are going to show you some headlines. They are actual headlines, okay? So it is not something that we have made up or we have created it. So we are going to give you these headlines, and you think and you write in the chat box that what could be possible story for it. So if this is the headline that you come across, then according to whatever is your understanding as of now, what do you think will be the story? So our first headline is "The Bravest Kiss Ever." This is the headline, "The Bravest Kiss Ever." Okay, during a war. The kiss of Titanic movie by the soldier kissing on Mount Everest. Okay, the story of Titanic. Okay. With a lion kissing a wild animal, mother love, yes. Someone kissing a crocodile, pig kissing a python. Okay, okay. Yeah, nice. Okay, let's move on to the next headline. Making it to the driver's seat. What would be the possible story for this? Okay, success after a long time, someone taking a lead, the clouds kissing, getting promoted to the CEO. Okay, leading, promotion as a school principal, letting others lead, achieved something, the Elon Musk story. Okay. Okay, some people are still writing about the kissing only. We have crossed that line. Okay. Fine, great. Okay, so I would like to ask now a different question. Please listen to the questions also when we are doing this activity. So now my question is that why are you telling me these stories? Why you could connect with these stories? Any idea that how, when making it to the driver's seat came, someone from you thought about leadership, someone from you thought about a CEO position, or when we were talking UAE women driver, yes, of course, or when we were talking about the bravest kiss, you thought about the war, you thought about the mother's kiss or someone dying or something on those lines. So what made you think about all these stories? Can someone, okay, one is a personal experience, prior knowledge,
Could it be
creativity.
about the decision-making skill, like the
Okay,
decisions being taken
okay, fair enough.
around the particular line?
Okay,
We've read a lot of things similar to it.
okay,
More of making
Learning
connections
critical
and
thinking. The
okay,
thinking also depends upon it.
okay.
Something that is
Can
pertaining
movies
to
pass? Yeah,
something
sorry.
that is pertaining to the World Cup, because we have seen the Euro Cups just now. So the drivers said India can play the World Cups very soon, or the
Correct.
Olympics are going to start. So something on the driver's seat for India.
Okay, fair enough. So now, so a lot of you are sharing the stories. You are able to connect your ideas, your thoughts with with the headlines that we are giving. Can you please? Okay, fine. So the story now we are going to show you the stories. Yeah. So the bravest kiss ever is the title or the headline which was given to the world famous photograph of a young girl and a boy who kissed wrapped in the Croatian and Serbian flag. So this particular story is taken from it is a photograph. So they are students of school. They're school going students of maybe grade 11 or a grade 12. They were walking together holding these flags. At that point of time, both the countries were at war. But these both students, they love each other and they were holding their hands. And when some people started pointing out that how can this two country flags students or the students who belong to these two countries are holding hands, they kissed each other to talk about that how for us the war does not matter. Our love is far beyond the war that is going on between our countries. And the school, so this particular story we have taken from the school website itself. This name of the school is UWC Mostar. So they have published this on their website and they are taking pride of the students who did this activity, who did this thing, who expressed their thoughts like this. Now sitting here in India, most of us, I'm assuming as of now that we are in India, and when we look at something like this, where our students would take up something like this, would we ever be, so can we ever imagine something like this or appreciate something like this? None of us could come up with this story or none of us could imagine this thing. And will we ever be able to talk about it so proudly in our context? Is it possible to do that for us? Okay, that is a clear no, never. Stuff, definitely no, maybe after 50 years.
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah, so correct. So again, we could not imagine something like this. I am sure in our cultural context, we would not even be able to talk about this. Rather, for example, at our school, we have a very strong PDA policy, which talks about the public display of affection. So PDA is not allowed. And of course, something like this will never be allowed as of now in the given context. But, and so because we come in this context, we look at this thing from our lens, from our environment, from our culture. For us, this is something that can never happen or will be never allowed. So again, the same thing that we were trying to talk when we were trying about the map thing, that it does not fit into our coherence. So to imagine something like this, to take a decision about something like this is never going to happen for us, because when we think something, it is not always that it is our individual thought process. Sometimes we may feel that this is a decision that I have taken it, but there is a very strong influence of our community. There is a very strong influence of our friends, our family, our thoughts, the books we read, and a lot of other things. You were also under the influence when you were answering the stories. Moving on to the next story. Making it to the driver's seat, the news was about the increasing number of women driving, auto rickshaws and finding their financial freedom and independence. So again, one of you did mention about the UAE women rights. So that does come closer to it. So again, this is also one of the questions that we have, that a lot of us thought about the CEOs or about about a lot of other things. But again, coming down to something like this was a bit difficult for us. Maybe it didn't immediately click us. Here we again have another question also, that why something like this should become the news? Why women are not like considered capable enough to have their financial independence? Why something like this should become news in the headlines, and why we should even talk a lot about it? So that is also one way of looking at it. So now just take some time. Please read this poem that is mentioned here. It is by Walt Whitman. So just go through it once. Anyone who could just summarize their thoughts based on what you have read?
Can I go?
Hi, ma'am.
Yeah.
May I, ma'am? Please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Ma'am, after actually reading all these things, whatever I have learned that you have to take the own charge of your own life. You should not depend upon on the others. This is your life, your chance. You have to actually prove it, and also you have to do it. And also at the end, if it is not actually given at the most best also, but still try, because it is at the end of the day, it is your life, and also you have to take a charge of it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yeah. Yes, Mohinish.
Yeah. So, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I connect this with the concept of tabula rasa, where like it's a blank slate. So you create your own story. It's you who creates perceptions, looks at different perceptions. So I think I was able to connect with that.
Okay, so we'll take a few more answers. Subi and then Surbi. And
All
then
right.
Jyoti, and then we'll move forward. Yeah.
Namaste. What I could understand from these lines is that as a person, or as a person with responsibilities and duties, you must listen to all the perspectives coming to you and then filter the information according to your own thoughts. Do not accept anything which is coming from somebody else as it is. Like if it's saying that second hand, third hand, do not believe in anything which is coming to you. Listen to everyone, then make your decision. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, even I think it is about perspective that sometimes we tend to, underestimate ourselves. It is our capability. We can reach, I know it's far, but we can reach it, but still we give it up. So yeah, maybe perspective. We should not do that. We are on a journey and
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it is about perseverance, where it says in the context of that we all have our own battles to choose, and when we go for those battles, sometimes we'll get so many ideas and so many thoughts from other people, but we should l- like try to see the benefit of what we are facing. No one can walk that path for ourselves except us. So it's about being at it, do what you feel right at that point of time. Maybe you're already on the correct path. Just to be more confident, you are on the correct path, and just move ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yeah,
Thank
so
you.
this particular line that it is here, that you shall not look through my eyes either. You should not look through the eyes of the dead. So a lot of time we take easily the knowledge which is which is second hand, third hand. We look through the eyes of the dead. That is like what our ancestors, or what has been talked about over so many years, or maybe what has been fed to us by so many people across so many years, or the books that are written, or what other people around you, the community around you, a lot of time, a lot of things being passed on to us. But then we, of course, this is a knowledge, and of course we are going to get those knowledge from other people, but we also have to ultimately take the decision ourselves. We have to use our own thinking to reach up to a decision that we want to make. So that is something that this particular song of from the Song of Myself talks about. So that is why we wanted to cover this aspect here. Can someone tell me that why this particular thing we are covering for a topic that we have today? Very quickly in the chat box. Yeah, so it relates to the half knowledge, yes. So why we are doing this thing, do not decide without knowing the truth, or original thinking, the grit. Yes, so largely, yes. So when we are talking about this particular poem, which it in a way talks about that how you have to do your own thinking. Of course, there will be influence of a lot of other people around us, but then ultimately it is us who has to take the thinking and move forward. So that takes me to talk about the agenda, which now Bhargavi ma'am will be taking up forward. So this is largely going to be our agenda for today.
So we will focus now on what is critical thinking, why do we need critical thinking, and how do we apply critical thinking. So let's start with the first portion. What is critical thinking? Says in next slide. So what does it mean? So let's read some popular definitions. So we want you to read the definition and then respond what do you understand by this. But don't respond now. First read both the definition and then respond.
Ma'am,
Yes. Okay, think different means critical thinking. You can start adding your responses and by comparing both the definitions. See the other side, right? Any keywords you can, so you can also use keywords and write your understanding. If you don't want to write statements, it is also fine. Reason, okay. Reason is the key. Logic, yes. Analyze and decide. Reasoning, filter information before acceptance, good. Reasoning to arrive at logic, reason and decide. What about the second definition? Something from there. Analyzing, logical, yes. Unbiased. Reason leads to action. Shazin, they want to look at the first definition as well again. The first definition. Okay. Understanding, conditioning. Think before you do, okay? And something regarding this definition, any one word or two words which has clicked, sensible,
non-judgmental.
Yes, non-judgmental. And somewhere where you question your beliefs, right? That's
Yes.
also the second definition talking about.
Interpretation as well.
Pardon?
Interpretation.
Right, good interpretation. Conscious precision, okay, fine. So good responses are coming up. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so there are few important things which you need to keep in mind when you consider critical thinking. I'll also share few examples with considering student and teacher perspective, so points will be easy for you all to understand. So you have to remember one thing very clearly is that critical thinking is not criticizing. So when you are doing a critical thinking, that means when you are questioning things or a decision, that is not criticizing. So there's a very clear difference between critical thinking and criticizing. Now, what does critical thinking require us to do? So the first important point is to assess claims that we hear, read, or see. So for an example, a student, so there's a rumor in a school that the canteen has stopped serving giant food. Now, what will happen to the student? The student will accept the rumor and then will start talking about it and will then talk with other grades, all students, and it will like go and go and go and it will never stop. So ideally, what should a student do in this case is that the student should go to the canteen and first check the information, whether the information is correct or not. So that is what you are assessing the claim made by someone. Now, if we consider from a teacher point of view, for example, a teacher or a leader or a coordinator gets a complaint email from a parent about something from the school, maybe a policy regarding issue or some incident which has happened. So our first instinct is to immediately write an email answering the parent, but it would be good if we understand the claim, we read the claim properly, we analyze the situation, we read the policy, and then take a conscious decision and then reply. So this is what we are trying to talk about when we talk about assessing the claims. There are a lot of claims made by a lot of people, and we just accept the claims at face, not even analyzing what the claim is trying to tell us. To be judicious, careful, and to intentional thinking. So if you consider the scenario, for example, a student has selected a topic for some science project. So they need to evaluate that how are they going to conduct the whole experiment? How will it work out? Well, where will the experiment be conducted? So who will be the audience? How is the child going to talk about it? Which chemicals do I consider? If I do it in an open space, then is the safety and precautions taken or not? If I'm doing it in a closed environment, what to do? So all these things when taught to students is nothing but a type of critical thinking we are teaching them, but we don't know actually, and we don't name it as critical thinking, but we have to do that intentional thinking as well. Or a teacher when creates a lesson plan for a group of students, the teacher takes into consideration the age appropriate lesson plans, what to add, is the information added in the lesson plan accurate or not. This all things what we are doing is nothing but actually applying critical thinking, but we don't ever think that it's actually critical thinking. To emphasize on use of reason or logic, so for example, we teach a lot about in vitro fertilization or stem cell therapy in science. So sometimes students say that, or teacher might say that, no, this is not a good option, we should not go for it. So now it is important that the teacher or student analyzes all the options first, understands each country. So each country has a different policy for that. Try understanding each policy of different countries, look from different point of views, and then come to a common conclusion. So when you are using different point of views, different research papers or different policies, you read it and then you teach them, or maybe they learn it, then it actually helps. That is how you are applying reason or a logic, or you are using evidence in any case to make judgment about our beliefs. So for example, when a teacher is teaching a history lesson and the child is very clear about a particular historical event, that this historical event, for example, let's take independence of India. So the child is very clear that the independence of India was only achieved through non-violence, nothing but violence, violence was not used at all. But now when a teacher presents all different perspectives, all different examples, all different evidences, where the role of Subhash Chandra Bose is taken, role of Bhagat Singh has been introduced, role of Mahatma Gandhi is introduced. Now the child is able to understand each and every paper or evidence is presented, and then the child can change the belief or the judgment made. So it is very important that we carry a lot of beliefs, and based on the beliefs we do our decision making. So it is very important that we look at all the factors first and then come to a common conclusion or a decision. Apply to real world problems. When how to apply critical thinking is, for example, a student has been given by a project to work on how to overcome plastic waste. So what will a student do? The student will go in the school. If it's a school project that you have to bring some change in the school, the student will go around the school, try to understand the problem, talk to the principal, talk to the head of the school, talk to students, teachers, understand the problem, and then come up with a solution. But before coming to, the child will also research, or the teacher will also research. Yes, that is experiential learning, but experiential learning applied to real world problems with critical thinking is where it is application of it. Just doing an experiment and coming to conclusion is not critical thinking. But when you take it out and solve real world problem, then it becomes critical thinking. If you have questions till now, you can add in the chat box. Okay. Now important is, why do we need it? So why do we need critical thinking? So now we move to why, the why question. So there are knowledge potholes. We will only be covering some of the barriers of critical thinking, because in a 1.5 hour session, not possible to cover all the barriers to critical thinking. The first barrier to critical thinking is trusting in authority. Can anyone give an example about how is it barrier to critical thinking? How is trusting in authority a barrier to critical thinking? Or any example if you remember. I just want one or
Will
two.
stop me to analyze and assess the claims.
Okay, claim made by whom?
Authorities.
Okay, and can you define, so which authority are you talking about? Whom do you
Leadership.
consider as
Maybe
authority?
leadership, maybe school leadership, maybe class teacher, maybe
Okay.
parents.
Okay, fine. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would.
Government.
May I?
Yes, Sonia. Yes, Sonia, you can add.
Yeah, I want to give an example here of a child where the mother says that, when a black cat crosses your road, it's not a good day for you.
Yes.
So the child might just trust the authority of the mother and not even question.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Trusting blindly, yes. And someone also wrote about government data. Absolutely. Trusting government on every decision. Good. Yeah, so more or less you are all clear what you understand by trusting in authority. And from teachers' point of view, sometimes it's happened that we have been given a textbook to follow and we just follow that textbook blindly. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of resources available online, there are a lot of resources available in the library, but we just consider that one book as an authority and just go on teaching from that book. So this is just a simple example because as a teacher, I wanted to use that example. Otherwise, there are a lot of government data. Yes, the government data was also a good example. For example, when COVID was happening, there was government data released. There was a release. There was a lot of things on WhatsApp, on social media, where people started believing in it and considered them as an authority, that social media is the authority, whatever the social media says is true. But then when World Health Organization was considered as an authority and what World WHO says, we used to trust in them, then it's right trusting in authority. But of course, what if people consider authority in a very different way all the time? Maybe leadership, government, parents, anything can be considered. Yes, children trusting parents. Okay, pattern recognition. Any one example if you understand pattern recognition? How can it be a barrier to critical thinking? Any
So I
example?
think, yeah.
It's something like already an example kind of a thing is there and we follow
I
it.
think if you can raise hand, Sublakshmi, it's better.
Oh, sorry.
If Debojyoti, you can add.
Thank you, ma'am. Yeah. So I think the pattern recognition is something that it can very easily identify to the assessments in the class, right?
Right.
So we have already known the assessments and like the summative assessment, formative assessment, it always has to be pen and paper mode. So that is very
Right.
much ingrained in our mindset. We can't break the barrier that, okay, a poster creation can also be something which is a formative assessment. Role playing can also be a formative assessment. So that's something which is like pattern recognition, where we know that there has to be a paper, there has to be a set of questions, there has to be corrected by the teacher after 2 hours and given it out. So that's an example like that.
Right. Ankita, you can give an example and we move forward.
Yeah, I was just thinking from a student perspective also that sometimes when we see a student being very notorious in the classroom or being very not being attentive at all times, we kind of assume that okay, so maybe the student can't take an independent decision or can't do a particular task. So I think that also forms a pattern that we assume that that student maybe will not be able to perform a certain task. So that also again becomes a pattern.
Yeah, that's a good example. I'm also reading assuming answer based on previous responses. Yes. Also known as confirmation bias. Of course, that's a technical word being used. Yes. So, for example, a teacher thinks that when I do a group discussion, then the results of my comprehension test is much better. So, this is again a teacher making a pattern. So, pattern recognition at times creates a barrier in critical thinking because you are stopping it. You are just considering that this is the trend and this trend always follows. I think someone also shared about share market trends, that this is how it always goes and this is how will again happen. So, absolutely, that's the right answer. I'll give a chance to other people who have raised hands for other questions because of the time constraint. Cognitive bias, any example? Cognitive biases? Someone already talked about confirmation bias, which is nothing but a part of cognitive bias. For example, I can talk about is that there is a student who has been given a project on climate change, has to talk about, yes, girls can't do maths, yes, social biases. So for example, they have given a project on climate change and the child says that climate change is not an anthropological activity or it is not caused by humans. And the Google search the child does. The child keeps on searching whatever the child thinks is true. So the child thinks it is not man-made. So the child keeps on adding the words in the Google search in such a way that the child is getting the results what the child wants. It's like something like confirmation bias. So that's nothing but one type of cognitive bias. Invention of MRI, last benchers are not good learners. Okay, so again, pattern recognition is being talked about, right? So cognitive biases are of different types. A woman can't drive. Yes. So there are a lot of examples. Chat GPT search, studying arts does not get you anywhere. Stereotypes, good, very good responses coming up. Girls should always be feminine. Yes. But we are now back on cognitive biases. So like I gave an example of climate change, cooking, yes, diet results, good responses, stereotyping, yes. So this can also be examples of few biases as well. Okay, we move to data errors. Any example for data errors? What are data errors? And anyone can share an example for data error?
Emotional influences.
Emotional
influences.
Data errors due to emotional influence. Okay, the role of emotion. Then 10% growth. So 10% growth. Okay. Purchase online.
There can be ambiguity in data that we have.
Right, and the ambiguity in data. So from science experiments, there can be ambiguity in data. The statistical graphs which are shown, the way it is shown can cause a lot of data errors, and that is why the decision making is impacted. Misinformation, yes. So the way the data is represented can also be erroneous, and the data being collected can also be erroneous. So student doing an experiment can collect an incorrect data. Maybe a teacher analyzing the results has missed out on one point, or a calculation can create an incorrect data and lead to data errors. The herbal products, recent temperature recording crossing 52 degrees are economical. Yes, there are very good examples. Doing a poll, of course, right? So sampling error, right? Absolutely. The sample. So sometimes in newspaper it comes that this many people have suffered, but when you look at the sample, only maybe 25 people have been. So only 25 cases, and out of that, only two people have been. So that's not an correct data to be represented. Poll exit survey, baseline for the news session for setting the target. False medical data, absolutely. Stratified sampling. So yes, sampling errors are right. So good examples coming. Manipulation in the form of statistical graphs, survey, yes. Okay, we move to categorization errors. Any example you all can share about categorization errors?
Feedback loops.
Feedback loops, yes. Then misclassification.
Preconceived notions in your head.
Preconceived notions in your head. Can you give an example for that?
If you're talking about any political party, for example, when you're stuck with one notion about one, I'm just giving a generic example. When you're stuck with one about that particular party, you are not open to, knowledge which is coming towards you. You're stuck with your, thoughts in your head.
Right. So for example, if a student is studying something regarding a bacteria, and then student gives an absolute statement that all bacteria causes disease. Now it is not true. So these are categorization error. You categorize that all bacteria are going to cause a disease, but that's not true. There are bacteria which are good also. We know gut bacteria are good. Yes, half knowledge. Or maybe an arts teacher who says that because the child does not know drawing, the child is not creative. Again, you are categorizing the child, categorizing things. So yes, there are real life examples, but with student and teachers, this also labeling few students regarding sports. Yes, categorizing low, medium, and high achiever. Absolutely right. Labeling media driven, half big knowledge leading to categorization, labeling. Absolutely right. Yes, based on the learning difficulties of the child, you categorize. Different girls can't do maths. Yes, so categorization based on gender, particular community. Absolutely. Okay, so we move to logical fallacies. Anyone has an idea about logical fallacies, or in general fallacy? So I'll just give an example that, for example, there is a student council election happening, and a student says that you cannot select this as my leader because the child is not good at sports. Now, this is like an illogical fallacy happening. You are connecting it totally to an illogical reason. So it is an ad hominem fallacy, but that's the name of the fallacy. But this is one type of fallacy. Errors in reasoning, okay. And that can also be a very common happening where teachers, when introduced with technology, used to say that, no, we don't want to use technology. We want to stay with our traditional techniques. That is traditional fallacy. So there are a lot of different fallacy, false analogies, rigging, okay. He drives a customized car, he may be very healthy. Okay, logical fallacies. There may be many such fallacies and we easily fall in trap. Of course, ad hominem, yes, ad hominem already addressing to the public, false belief, irrelevant comparisons, right? So there are a lot of different low order scan success, things regarding competition in sports. Okay, so good examples you are all giving. You can later on research about details of different type of logical fallacies or cognitive biases. This is just to give you a gist of what are the barriers to critical thinking. Let's move on. Yes, religious bias, of course, is. So let's again do an activity. So the task one is you will answer in the chat box You with a group of friends are stuck in a forest and it is getting dark and suddenly you sense a movement in the bushes. What will you do? We want the answer to be added in the chat box. This is the situation and you are run, be alert, okay? Stand still, stay calm, stay still. We'll look for the reason, run away. Okay, maximum is cry for help, run away, observe, scream. Use flashlight if you have one, shout. Keep quit till okay, carefully observing, stay alert, stay, have courage, inspect, okay, alert, okay, fine. Crying out, noises, stay calm, okay, fine. That's so I'm not answering anything as of now. Let's look at all the 4 tasks once and then we get back to it. So let's move to task 2. Good responses coming from you all. Now just answer one question. What is 4 plus 4? Immediate I want to answer. 4 plus 4. Oh, wow. Very quick. 4 plus 4 is 16. 44. Oh, no, I'm just asking a simple addition. 4 plus 4. Okay. And what goes with bread and? Answer. Bread and. Complete the sentence. Bread and butter jam, butter jam, butter jam. Okay, fine. Okay. Good responses. Okay, cheese can be. Now multiply 17 into 24 without using a calculator. Without using a calculator. 398, 208, 168. Okay, fine. Okay, let's move to task 3. Look at the following problem and calculate. I want the correct answer. A bat and a ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Please write the answer in the chat box. I want separate answer for bat and ball. $0.1, 1.1, bat $1. Okay. Okay. All with different answers. Okay, fine. Let's move to the 4th task. This you have to do on your own and then reflect in the chat. Were you able to do it? Did you face any challenge? You read the task and do it yourself. Done? Was it easy for you? So let's now talk about the first question about the forest. The answer was very obvious, where some of you said you will make a noise, you will scream, you will run away. So those were the different responses which came. And why do you think those responses came? So why do you think you answered it like I would run away, I would shout, I will make a noise? Instant reaction, act of mind, reflexes, looking at dark, visualize and connect, right? Because of conditioning, it was coming naturally, fight or flight, a very good freeze options, basic instinct, maybe prior experience, imagination, observation. Okay, let's move to the second question. I've seen movie Raz. Okay. This answer came, I know, but there were also incorrect answers coming up. You imagine the scenario. Okay, fine. So there were a lot of incorrect answers which came when I told you to multiply these 2 numbers. It took time. Did it took? I think someone is drawing something on the screen. Okay. It took time. Yes. Compared to 4 plus 4, it took time. Okay, fine. And the task 3. were incorrect answers, were many incorrect answers, because immediate reaction was 0.5, 0.1, but the answers are very different. So, okay. So the actual answer is the bat cost $1.05 and the ball cost 5 cents. That is the correct answer. But then the answers were very different. Okay, and the last task. Was the first column, the first task, the first part of the task more easy, or the second part of the task? The first one was easy. Okay. First challenging for the second column. First was easy. Fine. Okay. So basically, when you talked about, okay. Okay. So we'll, okay, complete. The responses are done. Now we move to actual why did this happen. So there are two different systems of thinking. So we think from two different systems. We call it as system 1 and system 2 thinking. So we will look at the difference between in the next slide. So the system 1 thinking is very fast. So when I asked you 4 plus 4, it was immediate 8. Second thing, it's subconscious. It's very automatic, very easily used in everyday decisions, but it can have errors. So it is error prone system. And system 2 thinking is very slow, conscious, effortful. You have to add in efforts, complex decision making, and it's very reliable. So when I asked you about the 4 plus 4 automatic, so system 1 started applying there, but when I told you to multiply it without using calculation, it took time. So you might have taken a pen and a paper and then you did multiplication. So actually you started using system 2. So immediately 4 plus 4 was very fast. So system 1 was used, and when it was the detailed steps of multiplication had to be used, then it was system 2 which you were using, which was a slow. Again, if you see the same thing, when a ball and a bat question was, immediate response came 0.5, 0.1. But if someone who is very good at maths can understand that you have to imagine X and Y and then do the sum. So the whole sum has to be calculated using the variables of X and Y, and then X plus 1, X plus 1 is equal to this much. And that is how the whole calculation is done. And then you come to the answer. So actually what happens is, this is a question of a cognitive reflection test which a psychologist generally do. So it is something like people fight or don't fight because you are using intuition. So when you don't want to fight, you use intuition, that this is my intuition, it is working on, and that is why my answer will be right. And there were many incorrect answers for the same thing which was coming up. But when you don't use the intuition, you actually take a pen and a paper and then try to calculate, you are using your system 2 thinking. Now, considering the 17 into 24, as I said, you took a lot of time, wrote all the steps. So what were you doing? If you actually observe your body, your muscles were tensed, your blood pressure generally rises a little, your heart rate increases, and if a closer look, your pupils dilate, because now you are into system 2, you sit, you write everything, then you come up with a conclusion. So every time when we are doing a conscious decision where efforts are involved, when the decisions are very complex, when the problems are very complex, then it requires a lot of our attention on that. And when we are completely attending to a task, what happens is we then don't know what is happening around us because we are using system 2. Critical thinking requires us to use system 2 because we are actually trained to use a lot of system 1. So immediately if something comes to us, there's an immediate reaction due to our reflexes, and that happens because of system 1. But critical thinking tells us that let's start using system 2 because that will actually help us in a better decision making. So as a critical thinker, we should start using system 2. Yes, someone is adding, but system 2 also leads to paralysis by analysis. No, that's overthinking then. That's not critical thinking. So we also need to differentiate what is overthinking and what is critical thinking. Okay. So I hope till, ma'am, what about emergency situation? Absolutely, Ankita, when there are emergency situation, we generally tend to act from system 1 because we are under fear situation. So according to psychology, it is the fight and the flight syndrome which starts working, no? So that is why generally we try to use system 1, but ideally we should calm ourselves down and then you start using system 2 thinking. So because and it's very difficult. I understand that shifting from system 1 to system 2 will take time, and it's not that in just one day you are going to learn critical thinking and start applying. It will take time, but at least if a conscious decision is taken that I want to use system 2, then it will help. It will take time, don't worry about that. But yes, in emergency situation we definitely use system 1 immediately, but it is difficult for us to shift to system 2 thinking. Yeah, difference between urgent and important, the 4 quadrants. Yes. Okay, practice in day-to-day tasks. Yes, once you practice, then it will become your habit. So let's move to the next slide. There are 3 sentences inside the triangle. Read them loudly. So not here, just for yourself. Read it loudly. Okay, were you able to spot the mistakes? Yes. Okay, good. So that's good. Just in 2 slides, you have started using a system 2 thinking. Otherwise, immediate reaction is system 1 helps you just to read the sentence or the statement. It is very difficult for you to find out the errors. If I would have shown this image in the beginning of this session, but now your system 2 has started working on, and that is why you were able to identify the mistakes or the errors in the lines. No, there's no specific name to system 1, system 2 thinking. That's the name which we are using, which is from a book that is slow and fast thinking. So the fast thinking, so thinking slow and thinking fast is the difference. So thinking fast is the system 1 thinking, and thinking slow is the system 2 thinking. We will also share you the resource from where we are talking about system 1, system 2 thinking. Next slide. So this is just, you can read it for yourself. What is system 1, system 2. Some of you please start sharing your instances where you have used system 1, system 2. Maybe you can use your school examples if that is possible. That where did you apply system 1 and where did you apply system 2 thinking? Or maybe a real life example also is fine with your day-to-day life. Someone wants to unmute and speak, that is also fine.
This is Fatima. Can I share now?
Yeah, yes, Fatima, sure.
Usually, my teachers come to me with their issues. Sometimes in their, sometimes losing their cools. So I think that during that time, the system starts working with us as a leader of the school.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fatima, for sharing. Very good. The first example which was given was when a proxy is given. I can understand what happens when that comes. Okay, in money matter, reacting to a situation without, during UGC NET exam, okay, you use system 2. Sometimes without listening the problem, I react. Absolutely, where there we are using system 1, calling boss, calling ma'am. Okay. Anyone else who wants to share?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Shruti, yes.
One may just be like, taking, your attendance or dealing with the daily problems of children, or, just executing a lesson plan. But
Right.
system would take, if I have to do differentiation in the class,
right,
design a particular curriculum, that's
Right.
when I would need system 2.
Okay, stranger testing knowledge. Okay, yeah, there are parent issues which come up, student issues which come up. So immediately our tendency is to go for system 1. When a child fails and gets hurt, so that is where the system 1 starts immediately thinking, but we should actually start using system 2. That is how we can act better. Okay, fine. So thank you for sharing that. So I think you are all more or less clear what is system 1 and system 2. System 1 fast thinking, system 2 is slow thinking. Working against deadlines, yes, urgent, important, but still deadlines not met, system 1. When the child gets hurt, yes, that's system 1, and then we go in detail how it happened. But even in fact, giving an first aid is system 1 because you are trained to do that, and that is why it is fine to use system 1 at that time. Okay.
Can I share one instance for system 2, which I
Sure.
implemented?
I think
Yeah, thank you
Arshia,
so
right?
much.
Yes.
Ashia. Okay, so this happened today. Actually, a parent complained about a teacher that the teacher has kept the child's workbook at school, and then she gave a big mail to the VP as well that the teacher is not giving the book, it is at the school, but the book was not either found at the school nor it was at the home. Then when I read the mail and called the teacher, I didn't reacted, but I called the teacher and found out what had happened. She said that we have been searching the book for a while, I mean 2 weeks back, and we haven't find it. Later on, an hour later, the teacher came up and said the book was found in some other child's bag, which she took it by mistakenly, and she kept it at home for 2 weeks. So this misunderstanding happened between the parent and the teacher, and the parent had written a big mail to the VP as well, which got an impact on the teacher. So instead of just shouting at the teacher, why did you do that? I sat down calmly and talked to her and find out what had happened, and then replied it to the parent as well that this was not the case, and it was just taken away by the child, other student mistakenly. So
Right.
that was it.
Great. And in fact, the parent also used system one thinking, and that is why that email had come to you. But good that you use the system to thinking. Okay, thanks for sharing. Okay, let's move to another slide now. Now, back to you, Shazin.
Yeah, so the last thing, and which is of course one of the most important thing why we are here, is that now we understand what is critical thinking, why it is important. Now we move on to the next stage, that is how do we apply it. So of course there are multiple ways in which you can apply, and like we started by saying it, that critical thinking is a skill which you have to develop over a period of time. So just now what we are going to talk about is some of the steps that has helped maybe me and Bhargavi ma'am over the years to develop it. And once you keep on practicing it again and again, this kind of becomes a very automatic process for you. And then maybe you will not be required to spend a lot of time consciously in doing the critical thinking. So we'll take you through the steps now. Yeah, so the first thing is that the first step that you should do is that frame the case study. So what we exactly mean here is that when there is a problem, or where there is a context or a situation where you are required to do a critical thinking, please try and identify and write down what is the context or the situation. A lot of time what happens is that there is something that comes across us, and we may just, immediately want to respond. The system once starts doing its work. So instead of getting into that flaw, try to write down the context or write down the situation of what is exactly your problem. Identify the problem and write it out in the form of a case study with all the possible data and information. So for example, if there is this issue, I've just taken this issue here, that is parent grievance, which someone was sharing right now. So instead of just getting into that system one and immediately want to respond to that parent, want to pacify that parent, or maybe we feel that, okay, why this parent is again and again raising the concerns, maybe take a pause button, take a step back, and try to write down the entire case study. Try to write it down and discuss with someone near you with whom you have already discussed this. Mention all of the problems that you are facing and when and where all of those instances have happened. So once you start writing down and once you create that entire case study, in a way you start realizing and analyzing the things that, okay, where exactly is the root cause of this problem. So that is the first step when you start a critical thinking. Moving on to the next thing, the next very important aspect of critical thinking is asking the right questions. So when you write down the entire problem, the situation, then now start asking all these questions. So we have listed down here, there are some of the questions already mentioned here. So focus more on who, what, where. There are other things also which will come. So like, who is affected by this issue? Who might see this differently? Who can provide more information? Who else should be consulted here? What is the issue at the hand? What are the evidences for it? What are the assumptions that we are making? What steps can be taken next? What are the alternatives that exist? Okay, then we want to focus on the where part. So where did this first become an issue? Where is the problem most evident? Where can we find supporting data? Where have the solutions worked for? Then moving on to the next set of questions, that is when. When did this issue first emerge? Or when is the deadline for the action? When is the best time to act? So try to answer different questions. There is why part also, there is how also. So once you write down all these questions, I would suggest that in my case and largely where we have done this, writing down things has really helped. So maybe take a paper, start writing, or use a whiteboard, write down all the possible things in one place, so that when you look at it, you have the entire view of the entire situation that is happening. So start writing down and asking those all questions. If you are doing it alone, then of course it is going to be a lot of introspection. But if you are doing it with your team, then involve them also in framing those questions, in answering those questions, and trying to find out and reaching to some conclusions. So that is the second stage. Moving on to the third one, which is very important, that is consider all the factors, which is called as a CAF. So CAF is one of the cognitive tools used for broadening the perception. So a lot of time, if I have to answer something, or if I have to take a decision, if I am a teacher, then there is a possibility that I may only look into the perspective of, okay, what would my co-teacher think about this, or what would the student think about this? But we have to consider all the factors. Start looking out from all the different stakeholders. And the stakeholders can be internal stakeholders who are in your school and in your, immediate circle, as well as your external stakeholders. External stakeholders in the form of your parents, in the form of the community, in the form of the government. There are a lot of things. If you are in a position of, say, management or a leadership, then of course government intervention and all those things are also to be considered. So instead of just looking at the obvious factors, it is important to look beyond the usual also. So for example, a situation like COVID came up. Now that was not something which was a very day-to-day problem or a routine problem. So to find a solution for that, we were required to look out for factors which were not very obvious. We had to broaden our way of thinking also. And also to remember and consider the point that the decisions that we make would impact multiple stakeholders. So sometimes when we take a decision, say for example, a child, if our school has a policy that coming late to the school or leaving early is not allowed in any case. But if today one of the child came late by only say 30 minutes, we may feel that, okay, the child has come late by only 30 minutes. It was raining a lot. So maybe in this case, we should allow. Now, in that individual case, we may feel that, okay, this is a right decision. But if you consider all the factors, where in the future, say for 30 minutes you allow, will you allow it for the 35 minutes also? Will you allow someone who is coming every day late for 15 minutes? Will you allow someone to leave early by 30 minutes? What if the parents come to know about this one particular situation where you allowed for 30 minutes, but where Bhargavi ma'am didn't allow for 30 minutes? So then we have to consider all the factors and then take a decision. So that is the next step. Moving on to the fourth one. Now you have listed down your case study. You have also considered all the factors. You have asked the questions, written down the questions. Now we will move on to the next stage, which is the listing of all possible solutions. Again, there is nothing outside the realm of possibilities at this point in discussion. So at this point, you should be okay to write down all the solutions that you could think of. Whether it is possible to implement them or not will come at the later stage. As of now, just list down all the solutions. So open the conversation to unlimited option, expand thinking beyond one person. Critical thinking includes the ability to keep an open mind to other considerations and viewpoints without losing track of the end goal. Expand the discussion to see new options and stay on the task by identifying multiple opportunities. So sometimes we may feel that, okay, this one particular solution has worked in the past, so we should continue doing the same thing. Instead, what we are trying here is that why don't you list down all other solutions also? Why don't you involve other people? Sometimes maybe there is one difficult situation that I am facing in my math class with one particular child again and again. But if I just keep on thinking about it and trying the solutions which has worked for me in case of other students, it is still a possibility it will not work for this student. So what I need to do is that I have to now start asking how the child is behaving in the science class, how the child is behaving in, say, arts, how the child is behaving in the sports, how the child is behaving in math. So I will have to get more data points here and then maybe try out a better solution also. Now narrow down to the solution. So now you have all the possible solutions. So this is also called as divergent thinking and convergent thinking. What generally we try to do is that whenever there is a problem, we focus on the convergent thinking. That is, we will always start with one solution and keep on trying different ways in which we will be able to apply that solution. We are talking about divergent thinking. Divergent thinking means that you try to find out multiple solutions and you keep more creative thinking open, and then you reach to that one particular solution. So we have listed down all the solutions. Now we have to take one decision. So sometimes the decision is very clear, and rationally following the steps helps one to reach there. So sometimes it is going to be very simple and you will be able to reach there. However, in few cases, the decision has to be made between the two rights or the two wrongs. So again, if you are in a leadership position, or if you are dealing day in, day out with the parents, if you are in a management position, then there are going to be very tricky decisions. The decisions have to be made between the two rights, or between, sometimes even between the two wrongs. So in those cases, you will have to find out that, okay, if I choose one of this as my decision, how the other people, other stakeholders are going to get impacted out of it. So, using the theory of utilitarianism, that where there is maximum good or where there is maximum happiness, we may have to take such decisions also. In such cases, using moral compass and emotional intelligence with critical thinking is equally important. A lot of time we feel like when we take this session, a lot of time our teachers or other people, they ask us that critical thinking means you don't have to use your emotions, or you don't have to talk a lot about ethics, but you have to be very practical. But that is very incorrect. Critical thinking actually requires you to be wise enough to understand how much emotional intelligence is required to take a decision, or how do you use your own ethics and moral compass to reach to a decision making. So critical thinking does emphasize a lot on emotional considerations too. So when you start doing critical thinking, it does not mean that you have to be very practical, because that is not what critical thinking says. Critical thinking says that you have to use your emotions, you have to use your wisdom, you have to use your ethics, and considering all the factors, you have to reach to that one particular solution. So these are the 5 broad stages that will help you to find a solution using critical thinking. Any questions that you have so far?
So as a critical thinker, you cannot keep on asking a lot of questions. You cannot be totally skeptical. So cannot be on just one end, and cannot be gullible also. Keep on accepting everything. You have to have a balance between being skeptical and being gullible. So that's what a good critical thinker is.
Yeah, correct.
So I have added the Padlet link where you can add your reflection about the session. The 3 questions are added in the slide, but the same questions are also added in the Padlet link for you all to refer.
And meanwhile, if there are any questions that you still have, please keep on posting them on the chat. We will try to respond to them. Yeah, so there is this question here, shouldn't this depend on how much authority one has on making this decision? So definitely, yes, I agree with it. But at the same time, considering multiple, so as of now, yes, we have a varied audience that we have right now. As a management, or when you are making the decisions within your influence, within your own boundaries, that is something that you will be required to do. So I completely understand. Now we come from a school, Fountainhead School, where we have a lot of freedom, where there is a lot of transparency in decision making also. So we are blessed in a way to be in that organization, where if we feel that certain decisions that are taken are incorrect, we always have our voice and we can always raise that. So I guess for us in that scenario, yes, that works very well. But maybe I completely agree with what you are trying to say. So depending on your situation, you will be able to make that decision. Yeah, we are very lucky.
And maybe the decision you cannot make, but at least a suggestion can be given from your end to the higher authority that considering all these factors, this can be a possible decision. Now, but we don't know which position are you at, but then let them take the decision, whatever it was. At least from your end, you have considered all factors and have suggested them. So that at least can be done. You can post your questions here. Meanwhile, please add reflections to the Padlet link. I'm again adding the link for your reference. Deepika, they can also add reflection later on as well, right?
Yes, ma'am. We will share the link with them.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I'm unable to edit the Padlet link.
Others are, just because we have given rights.
Ma'am, it says it's locked.
We will check from our end as well.
Also, the names like Bhargavi, Bergi, and Shezin Siganpura, it is already mentioned in the slides, which will be shared. So if you want to share your feedback or any reviews or talk about it or connect with us on LinkedIn, then you can use our names to find our profiles there also.
Sure, ma'am, I will.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am, got
People
it.
are already adding it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So
I can see responses on the Padlet link.
Okay, there is this another question here. How can we make sure that critically thought decision is not taken as criticism? So again, so when you have followed the entire process, if you have followed the process of, listing down the problem, considering all the factors, also listed down all the possible solutions, and then weighing out what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing, and if you talk about them using those necessary evidences, then I am sure the person will be able to understand that this is a critically thought decision and it is not a criticism. Because I don't know why people associate critical thinking with criticism, because they both are very different. So if I take a decision based on critical thinking, I don't see that someone would even categorize it as criticism. Criticism is just point blank, you are just sharing your opinion there. It is not even a decision making. So yeah, if we use case studies in classroom, we should respect everyone's answer and make a decision together. Yes. Okay, moving on to some of the resources that we have added here. So the books, these are because considering that, okay, we are just starting critical thinking and using this as a skill, these are two books that would definitely help. The first is The Art of Thinking Clearly. This book has very small stories, and each story is completely individual part, and individual stories talk about different biases. So if you read those stories, so when we read it, it is just 1 or 2 page stories for different biases. So when you read these stories, with every story, you will be able to connect that, oh, this is how even I think. This is how even I have made a mistake, or even I have been a part of this bias. So I guess it is something that you could relate very well. And because you read it and then you try to understand the bias, next time when you are making the same decision making and same bias takes a role in your thinking, you kind of, take that pause button that, okay, again, I'm doing the same bias. Again, I'm falling in the trap of, say, negative bias or a social acceptance bias or a confirmation bias. So The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobel is a very good book. Then the next book that even Bhargavi ma'am was referring to, Thinking Fast and Slow, it is a book by Daniel Kahneman. Again, this book talks a lot about how our thinking works. And it helps you to analyze that, okay, how sometimes you use the fast thinking, slow thinking, where you should use which kind of thinking. And it gives a lot of scientific understanding of our brain and our thinking process. So that is also a very nice book. There are some of the TED Talks which talks about critical thinking added in this link. Also, there are a lot of online courses available, and these online courses are available for free, which do talk about critical thinking in different scenarios. So critical thinking with regards to decision making, critical thinking by using arts as a medium. So there are a lot of online courses. Of course, if you want the certificate, then you will have to pay for the fees, but otherwise you can do the entire course for free. So the links are also added here for the same. Yes, Shruti, you have a question?
No, I don't have a question. I just have a thought. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Yeah.
So basically, there's a point where somebody mentioned about how critical thinking and criticism are, and that's where I was just trying, or how, why should somebody not take the critical thinking or the critical feedback given as a criticism? I think sometimes, like the points that were made, adding all the data and the facts, and how there has to be a balance between practicality and being emotionally intelligent also at the same time. I think when we are having such conversations where critical thinking and critical feedback is required, a balance of acknowledging the person, acknowledging the fact that the person in front would have, and also appreciating the person's presence would definitely help in not leading it to criticism, but accepting the conversation that takes through the critical part. So that's
I could get some sense of what you were trying to say, and I agree with it. It was just that the voice was breaking a lot, so we could not hear the exactly what you were trying to say. But I do get a sense of it, what you were trying to say. Thank you so much.
Reshma has asked a question: what if other person is not ready to listen or analyze the fact? Reshma, it's difficult for everyone because it is not only critical thinking, emotions play a very major role, and that stops us from critical thinking. At times we can change ourselves, not others. So we can just keep on trying, but very difficult to change other people unless they understand the difference between the two. You might have understood it now because for them it may take time. So there will be situations where people will act out of emotions and which is difficult to control. Maybe you will have to find a method where you use critical thinking and then help the other person understand, considering the situation, context, and then help the other person.
Yeah, and like we even started with the same thing that, this session is only for your own understanding, your own introspection. There are a lot of things that you learn about emotional thinking, about emotional intelligence, about critical thinking, but you have to understand that the other person with whom you are interacting or, discussing may not have gone through the same process. So expecting them also to understand the way from where you are coming is always going to be difficult. But because you develop this skill over a period of time, your decision making and your way of dealing with those situations is going to improve. And like we said, critical thinking is also about wisdom. So it is also about that you know very well that, okay, here the other person, even if no matter how much you try, is not going to accept what you are saying, no matter how much well thought your decision is. Critical thinking also in a way tells you that it's okay not to invest so much time in that other person then. So that is also equally important for us to understand where to have that, boundary to stop yourself from extending beyond a limit. Yeah. Also, the links and everything will be shared, I'm sure. So that would be provided to you all. The resources are part of the presentation only.
And I think Shruti Das or someone also has added the return notes photograph, might be useful to you all as well. That's a good work. Return notes added as a photograph will be useful for others as well.
Okay.
So if you have further questions, I think Anu ma'am or Deepika ma'am can share the questions with us through our emails and we can also answer those questions.
Thank you so much, Sezin and Bhargavi ma'am, and thank you all for being such an engaged and responsive audience, truly inspiring. We hope that today's session provided you all with strategies to enhance your critical thinking skills. And let's take these lessons and apply them to our own practices, making a difference in the lives of our students, teachers, and communities. So, in the interest of time, we shall pause now. And in case you have any questions, kindly mail them to us at programs@firki.co, and we shall share those with our speakers as well. Um, but yeah, before you leave, please note that we will be meeting again tomorrow, same time, but with a whole new learning experience curated just for you with another two very experienced speakers. The feedback form will be available only on day 3 of the workshop. And in order to get the certificate, you need to be present on all the 3 days of the workshop and fill in the feedback form. So this basically helps us to grow and improve our resources for you. And yeah, so once you receive the feedback form, fill the feedback form at day 3, you will receive the attendance certificate as well on your registered email ID. And yeah, so if you have any questions, please feel free to send them to programs@firki.co and kindly drop off or stay here for any more questions, right? And yeah, please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter for more regular updates. And yeah, thank you for joining us today and engaging during the session. We hope you found value in the session today.
So thank you all for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Deepika, do we have to fill the feedback form daily or on the third day?
We will share it on day 3. So it will be only one feedback form for all the 3 days.
Folks, you can all drop off now. In case some of you have questions, our speakers have graciously agreed to stay on for another 5 minutes to just answer any questions. So you can either drop off or raise your hand if you have any question that you want to ask. I don't see any hands raised. You can come off mute if you have a question.
Hello,
Yeah.
I'm Salman here.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question to both the speakers. The poem that was shared earlier, right? Uh,
Yes.
in the poem, the poem had something like from the perspective of the dead, or from the books, like it was talking about having your own views, not own views, but not imposing others' views, and taking it as uh, as true. Okay. I just wanted to know, like, what was it trying to convey? We don't have to kind of take in information from others, or is it more about like being able to uh, analyze the all information from all sources, and then be able to take the decision independently?
Yeah. So, what we are trying to say here, or what is our interpretation of this particular poem, is that when you start critical thinking, or when you start using your thinking and your wisdom, you don't have to always take things second hand or third hand or through the eyes of others. Of course, we live in the community, we are the knowers in the community. The knowledge of others is definitely going to impact us. They will influence our decision making, and everything is going to happen. But we also have that wisdom now that we will listen to others and listen to their views, and then maybe take a better decision for ourselves. So a lot of time what we do is, like, for example, if I belong to a family of believers and they believe in God, they are going to continue believing in the God. But just because they believe in God, that doesn't mean that I will continue doing the same thing. Because now I no longer require to take the information second hand or third hand, or from the, from the eyes of the dead also. I have my own way. I may continue to believe in religion, but when I take that decision, I'm going to take that decision far more wisely. I am not going to just take it because my mother told me that God exists, or my father told me that God exists, and this is what we are, and this is what we have to believe in. When I ask them a question, and if they tell me that, okay, you don't have to ask a question, you just have to follow it, that means, and if I follow it, that means that I am just taking the information second hand or the third hand, and I am getting into the authority bias, and I am not having my own sense of understanding here. So I give an example which is very limited to say religion, but that is a possibility in a lot of other things. So, decision to whether invest in shares, or whether to continue with SIPs, or decision to marry or to not marry, or decision to start teaching as an career, or decision to give up something or to get something. There are a lot of decisions that we take in, day out. But if we don't look at it from our end, from our own perspective, and continue looking at how other people are telling us to do, then actually we are not thinking there. So that was the entire idea to start with this, that you have to travel this road yourself and not through the lenses of others. Does it make sense?
Thank you so much. Makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's one question on the chat box by Rakiba, ma'am. Ma'am, can you quickly come off mute and ask?
So
Are
I
you here?
is talking about that, ma'am, one of my students is depressed by her family. How do I encourage her to think critically? I think we both would suggest one clear thing, which is generally what happens in our school, and we suggest, don't tell the child to think critically at this point. The child needs a well-being counselor at this point of time, because the child itself is feeling a little depressed. It would be great if a well-being counselor or a psychologist, of schools also has a psychologist, right? I think the child should talk to the psychologist or a well-being counselor of the school first, because this is not the time when the child has to be told to think critically. The child has to come out of the depression first, and then can think about it. But first thing is, a well-being counselor help would help.
Absolutely. Anybody
Thank
else
you,
has
ma'am.
any questions? Come off mute and ask, please.
I think there was a question on checklist. Any suggestions for checklists that
I
can be
replied, saying that we don't have a checklist as of now, but we consider all factors wala the formula. And the most important thing is, every situation is different. So when such situation come, we consider it as a whole different individual situation, sit together, understand the factors, consider all factors, and then only take a decision. There cannot be one checklist for each problem, because each problem is different. The stakeholders under that problems will be different. So you cannot have just one formula or one checklist to do a decision-making process. So each individual situation will be different. But consider all factors, the framework can definitely help. That question, I think I've answered also.
Anyone else with a question? Quickly come off mute because we are running out of time. Let's hurry up and ask a question if you have. If not, just drop off the call. Okay, since nobody is asking, I think we can close out in that case. Thank you so much, Bhargavi ma'am and Shazin ma'am, for your valuable time and expertise. I personally had a lot of amazing takeaways, which I am surely going to apply to my work. And I'm sure all the participants also learned quite a lot. We can see in the chat box that they are thanking you for the informative and interactive session. I think everyone's taken back quite a lot and they're excited for day 2 of the workshop. See you all tomorrow. Please do not miss tomorrow and day after. Only then you will receive the feedback form and the certificate. So see you all same time tomorrow for the second part of the workshop. Thanks everyone. Have a very good evening. Bye bye.
Bye bye.